Hello everyone, this is a video series on setting a Vortex quadcopter by ImmersionRC for UHF or long-range FPV. I'm currently using the Vortex 250 Pro. However, I cannot guarantee that this video will work with the Vortex 285 or other versions of Vortexes that may be released in the near future. That is because the electronics and the power distribution, most importantly, are much different than the Vortex 250. Again, this video is only going to be for the Vortex 250 Pro. Previously, I covered how to set the Team Black Sheep Crossfire long-range radio system. In this episode, I'm going to cover how to modify and add different video transmitter modules so you can use different frequencies besides 5.8 GHz. I will show you this with 1.3 GHz frequency, as I do not have the 2.4 GHz module yet. I do have the receiver module. We're going to need lots of parts for this video. We're going to need a soldering iron. We'll need a fat shark system, as I have the receiver module right here. You could also use a 1.3 GHz or 2.4 receiver for a monitor. However, those might be hard to come across. I think it's just easier to have it with the fat shark system if you already have a fat shark. The modules aren't too expensive and they're good to have anyway if you would decide to upgrade. We're going to also need hot glue, several different tools. I will list this in the video description and of course in the video, as always. Many of you are wondering, hey, this is a removable video module. I wonder if we could actually get different frequencies. However, there have been no different frequencies available, even with the Vortex 285 being released a year ago. It's always been stuck on 5.8 GHz. I was doing some debugging and I realized that this module is actually pretty much identical to the other Fat Shark video transmitters. I disassembled the 1.3 GHz module, 8-channel one, and I looked at the pinouts. If you see right here, we have 5 volts ground, video, audio left channel, and audio right channel. Here we have pretty much a similar thing. We have 2 grounds, 5 volts video, audio, and some other control stuff. I believe the other control stuff is what allows you to change the video frequencies via OSD without having to use the dip switches. I did some debugging and with the power distribution board, and I realized that you could actually just plug this module in. If you plug the module in, you will only get one video signal, or one channel, and you won't be able to use the other 7 channels. It's a good idea to have other channels, so there's some other modifications that will need to be done. Before I plug this in, I'm going to prepare the flight controller module wiring before I plug this in, because I don't want to risk burning this thing out if I don't disconnect the proper wires. I don't think that is required for you to disconnect the wires, but for safety precautions, I think it's a good idea too. And I don't want to burn out the flight controller, otherwise I'm going to have to wait a while for parts. You should have your Vortex, the top plate off, remove all the screws, and remove your flight controller, the 4 screws right here. Make sure to remove some of the FPV camera so you have more room to work with. So we're going to remove the flight controller right here. And now we're left with the empty power distribution board, pretty much empty. As I mentioned about the pinouts, what was interesting is that the three important pins that control the channels would be set on video, ground, and 5 volts out. And also there's a main ground plane. If you plug this in and also this, you'll notice that these 3 pins, I hope you can see this, right here, pin 1, 2, and 3, those are actually circuit board traces you can just trace along, and they lead up to the first 3 pins right here. We'll need to disconnect these 2 before I can plug the module in. Again, you might not need to unplug it, but it will prevent power sending it to the flight controller. And maybe you might not burn out if it's plugged in, but just for, again, to reduce the amount of risk, I'm going to disconnect those. And how I verified that this, you can change the how the transmitter can change channels with the dip switches, is that if I open this package up right here, and we take a look at the dip switches on the back, I guess I'll put some higher resolution images on the back or on the video description. There's the different pins right here. So there's 1, 2, 3, and the fourth switch right here isn't being used at all. There's no connection. So pin 1 right here refers to this pin right here, and then the second pin goes to the second one, right? The second switch goes to pin 2, which is on ground, and then the third pin goes to video, which is right there. And then the top pins right here, this goes to the central ground. It goes to the entire ground, or to the copper port on the printed circuit board. And I found out that was ground. You can verify this if you get a multimeter and just start probing around. If you don't really need to change different channels, then you don't need to follow the rest of the video. But I like to have different channels in case if I'm racing or there's other people on the same frequency, it's easier to change. If you plug this module in, you're going to be stuck on, I believe, you're going to be stuck on channel 8, because the dip switches, actually you'll be stuck on channel 8 because by default the dip switches are placed in the off position. Everything is off, so you only have channel 8. It's nice to have the other 7 channels. Just for illustration, just to show you that this works, and then we'll get to the main part of how I did this. Make sure that the pins and everything are seated correctly. And then we're going to remove my 5.8 gigahertz antenna. I will use a stock linear antenna or rubber ducky antenna for the 1.3 gigahertz. Next, with the flight controller, we need to remove these 3 pins right here. The flight controller goes in this direction. You have the altimeter right here in this direction, and there's a little arrow obviously on the back that tells you the direction of the flight controller. Kind of tug on this cable to pull it out. And then we're going to pull these 3 cables from here. What I'll do to prevent the redoing of the wiring, I'm going to actually pull it from this side, because I'm going to put the dip switches with here. In a sec, I will show you the diagram after I show you this demonstration of 1.3 gigahertz video working. Get a little handy X-Acto knife, and we're going to pull the wires out from the cable. Yeah, I love these Pico blade connectors. So many different varieties and variants. I've always kind of wondered why there was a decision to use the wires rather than just straight header pins just to put the flight controller down. Kind of odd decision, but anyway, let's put down a few screws for the controller. Okay, so the next step we need to do is change the receiver module out of the Fat Shark system to 1.3 gigahertz. Unfortunately, it's going to be hard to show you some of the video because I don't have an FPV monitor that is 1.3 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz. I only have a 5.8. But I'll record the video that I see on here via the DVR and also shine the camera into the lens if I can, if it's possible. Okay, we'll power up the goggles. Okay, the RF module is on. Again, when you're working with your quadcopter, I like to say with other videos, make sure to remove your propellers and also have your video antenna on whenever you're going to power the system up. Just a good safety tip to have in your mind. Oh, I should probably plug in the receiver real quick. Alright, so I'm looking through my goggles. And I am getting an image. It's a little blurry. Hold on. I think there's a loose cable somewhere. It's a little blurry. I think the video receiver is not on, or transmitter isn't on all the way. Sometimes you gotta make sure it's seated properly. Okay. Yeah, I had a loose connection in the transmitter and the receiver module. If you see right here, let me record this one. See right here, I'm getting, wow, it's really hard to see on the camera. But anyway, there's evidence that I have a video from 1.3 gigahertz and it's working fine. As an issue I didn't seat the video controller or the transmitter in properly, and it needs to be held really tight. I could probably try to work with some of the solder joints to make sure that doesn't happen. And I also needed to reseat it on the receiver side with the goggles. Okay, let's cover how I did this process so we can wrap up this video. Okay, so for the first step, we need to get the RX module, the TX module, the transmitter module off of the Fat Shark or the video transmitter PCB right here. The process takes a while. You have to be good at desoldering, and it takes some patience. Essentially, you're going to remove the shrink tubing right here, the shrink wrap right here. Remove the shrink wrap that comes with the transmitter. and then you're gonna desolder these wires right here. You're gonna desolder this one, and this one, and then you're gonna desolder all these 9 pins right here. It's kind of a tedious process and it takes a long time. And then the next part you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to desolder the dip switch right here. You can use your own dip switch if you want, but the one that comes with it works. It's just as fine, and maybe it might be harder to source different dip switches. And this one's pretty small anyway. And I know this one works too, so no need to buy extra stuff. You're gonna need to have a lot of patience to remove this to prevent the video from being too long. I already did this outside. Again, remove the 3 pins right here, and then the 9 pins up here, and then carefully desolder the dip switch as well. I was okay at desoldering. I kind of decided that when I got rid of most of the solder, I just kind of just broke the board off at the end right here. This part right here, just got on my vise and just kind of snapped it right here, and then I was able to desolder the rest. Same thing with the SMA part connection. And then I ended up, I have a pretty good soldering iron. I just cranked up the temperature, and just was able to remove the dip switch. This is definitely really small, but 4 pins right here. After you do that, make sure to clean off the header pins of any gunk from solder and make it as smooth as possible so it will fit in the socket right here. There are the sockets right here, 3 up here. That's for the SMA connection, and then this is for the video portion. Next part we'll need to do is we're going to solder the dip switch, get this, and we're going to mount it to the hull of the Vortex. We're going to need a Dremel or a little drill to drill a hole, and we'll just mount this, and then we can change the video channel without having to open this up. You could place the dip switch inside the quadcopter, but it's always a pain in the ass to open this up, remove a bunch of screws just to change a channel. And what happens if someone else arrives and they're on a similar channel? Then you gotta change it. For that, I ended up using a small 5-blade pico blade. You don't need to have five pins. You can do it with 4 pins. You need to have minimum of 4 pins. The last pin is going to be used for the ground plane and everything like that. And I just pulled this little female connection from a different flight controller board. I just managed to desolder it from here. You don't need to have a removable socket, but of course if you decide to do work on the quadcopter, it's a good idea just to have it removable, and you can just disconnect it like that. Really easy to do, rather than desoldering. This part will be soldered on to the dip switch, and then this will go to the flight controller right here with those 3 wires. And then the last wire, the master ground or the main ground plane, will go to the power distribution board. As this board right here is technically the power distribution board for the transmitter. All right, before we start, let's go write it down the diagram, or show you the diagram of everything I've mentioned so far. The schematic. I guess we'll call it the poor man's schematic. All right, so we have our pins right here. I'll post this in the video description as well, a nice picture of it. Let's see how many pins we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just draw that here. 1, 2, 3. We're only concerned with these 3 right here. And I could just draw the other ones. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is for the transmitter board right here. And then you have your 3 up here for SMA. We'll ignore those. We have our flight controller right here. We'll just do the first 3 up here. 1, 2, 3. If we draw arrows here, which would be like on the printed circuit board for the power distribution, it goes like this with the traces. And then let's label these. This is going to be 5 volts. This is going to be ground, G and D. And then this will be video. See, these correspond. 5 volts out, ground, video. Goes here. And then this is going to go, these 3 wires right here are going to go to our dip switch. Let's draw out the dip switch. We have our 4-position dip switch. 1, 2, 3, 4. And our pins. If we reference the transmitter right here, the top part, as I mentioned before, is your main ground right here, and then this will go to this is G and D. Wow, I can't write. G and D power distribution board. And then these other ones, channels 1, 2, and 3. Channels 1 goes to the 5 volts right here. And then ground goes to the middle one, channel number 2. And then video goes to channel number 3. Sorry it's a little bit messy. Let's assign some colors to it. I guess color doesn't really matter too much. Let's pick. Let's see. We'll make red. We'll make this the red wire for power. And then for ground, I guess we'll do white. Actually we'll use it's next door. We'll use black. How about that? We'll use black, and then we will use video for yellow. And then the last one will be white. And this doesn't connect to that part. Here's the diagram right here. It's a little bit messy. Actually, I have a better picture of diagram somewhere. Hold on. I was just playing around with different wire coloring. Similar idea, you have your pins go here, and then it goes to your dip switch. We'll follow this one, because I like the color choices better. Alright, we're going to power up our soldering iron, and then we're going to do some soldering. I'll speed up this portion of the video. Oh, and remember how I removed, before I solder, remember how I removed these 3 wires? We're going to end up just soldering this connector to it. And we don't have to take a knife or anything to pull out the wires from here. It will just make it easier just to solder directly. We have some shrink tube wrapping, and we can just make it look nice and good. Okay, that took some time to solder everything together, but everything is pretty much ready to go. I will just need to drill a small hole to put this dip switch into the side of the hull of the Vortex. What I did here is I put the ground wire for the dip switch here where the ESC. So I can get a little closer view. That white wire right here on the ground, and then I used existing wires right here for the red wires for the black, red, and yellow, and then I have the the little socket connector right here. I can just quickly detach and remove if I need to. Next, we'll hook in the flight controller. Alternatively, we could have made these wire leads go from this pin, or just have had soldered the wires here for the dip switches. But I wanted to make it look nice and neat, so I did it underneath the flight controller. And I'd rather just have the wires in the back anyway, rather than up here. Just make sure everything is secure, and then we're gonna screw this the flight controller back on. There's a bunch of other little sockets right here. I wish they would have them mention in the manual what they do. There's one for a GoPro. There's two other ones I don't know what they do. Anyway, let me find my screwdriver to mount the video controller back in. Okay, the flight controller is pretty much mounted in. I'll do the final mounting of it when I'm about to assemble the rest of the quadcopter. But we have our cable right here for the dip switch. And then now we just have to mount this to the hull. I'll need to check clearance, of course. It's a pretty tight fit. Not a lot of room. That's why it also helps to use the included dip switch or desoldered dip switch from the video transmitter. Because I only have about 4 millimeters. 4 or 3 millimeters. Alright, I figured out where I'm going to mount it. Put it right here. Use my Sharpie to mount. Denote where I'm going to drill. I'm going to quickly go drill this and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back now. I mounted the dip switch in the hull of the Vortex right here. I put some hot glue on the back just to seal and seat the dip switch in. And I have my little connector right here. Now we're going to mount this back into the chassis. There is some debate if you need to have the sticker removed, because the sticker, well, there's actually a little metal thing right here that your spring would go on here. Some people say it's for grounding purposes. I find that a little hard to believe, but it's more of metal surface so that when you put the spring on here, it will actually hold the transmitter down. It will actually, I don't think it does any grounding or any special heat dissipation. It's just there that it doesn't rub off the label or anything like that. This is just there so it holds the transmitter without, and helps prevent from popping out in case of a crash or anything like that, or in mid-flight. That's my reasoning behind it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I've seen. That's what I think it is. All right, we have the quadcopter pretty much assembled. Let's power everything up and hope it works. Okay, we have video signal here. Try to see how clear it is. All right, we're gonna flip the switch to something else. Let's try to go to a different channel. I need something pointier. Okay. Looks like it's working also. Pretty nice. Let me start recording this just to show you, because you can't really see what I'm seeing in the goggles. Alright, so this is one channel right here. And then now I'm going to switch the channel on the dip switch. So we see some fuzz right here. Switch it up. There's a different channel right there. And I think if we bring this down, no channel right here. Okay, we have a different channel right here. Tuned into that. And okay, another channel. I think I might have accidentally flipped the switches around. It looks like I'm on channel 1 since everything is on. And I'm at the very end of the spectrum right here. If I bring this middle switch up, switch number 2, up into position, I can switch a few more. There we go. Video is crystal clear. It's really nice looking. See what happens when I flip this switch. I'll flip up switch number 1. And we got video right here. Looks pretty nice. Yeah, so video is working and we're able to switch between the different channels as specified on this chart right here. Unfortunately, I wish it would tell you what channel you're on in the goggles, but it just doesn't do that anyway if with other modules as well, like even the 5.8 or the 2.4. But I tested out the different combinations and we have 8 different channels. tested out most of them. We have at least have 7 channels, 8 channels, something like that. Let me disconnect this. Again, here's the diagram of what we did. Just to recap before I wrap up this video, we took the 3 pins right here on the video transmitter and we mapped them out to the dip switches on here, to the part of the flight controller. We took 5 volts, ground, and video. We took that to the flight controller right here. We took the extra wires from here and we connected them up to the dip switch. Because as mentioned earlier, that's how the dip switches change the video. They change them on based off of the outputs and they turning them on or off just to change the channels. Kind of an odd way to do it, but it works. And then we took this these other pins on the dip switch, the ground, which goes to the power distribution board, and then grounded that, connected the dip switch with that via wire. Soldering does take some time, but if you follow this diagram, which I will post a better looking one in the video description, you should be able to get the same exact results as I did just now. Again, there's always a risk of burning if you accidentally short something or burn something out, if you solder something up incorrectly. But if you follow everything I showed you here, you should not run into that issue. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them below and I'll be happy to help you out with any troubles you have. Because I believe, yeah, you'll have a lot of questions on this. I'll post a bunch of pictures and images below in the video description, of course. And as always, have a nice day.